Okay, so we're live. Episode 7, Season 3. Feminists. Who needs them anyway? What does it mean to be a feminist? What does feminism stand for? What should it stand for? Where is it needed, if anywhere at all? Is it a problem or a solution? Is it a bit of both? Has feminism been hijacked by the feminazi? We discuss all this and more straight after this. Right, welcome back. Episode 7, Season 3. Is there going to be fireworks, Madge?
I'm not so sure. I think some people are expecting a lot of fireworks, and some people are expecting those fireworks to be directed at you and I. So I think the comments themselves on promoting this, no, I say promoting this topic, but in sharing this topic as the poster yesterday, only in the evening, is indicative of the kind of conversation we could possibly expect. I mean, it's funny how so many assumptions were made about the content of this conversation just by looking at the poster, and how many some people were spewing some vile stuff like, I actually got, believe it or not, kind of messages of condolences in my message.
It was nice knowing you.
Yeah, I mean, I got some people saying like, bro, listen, I know you, I know what you're about, but you got to be careful of some of these people. They're going to tarnish your, reputation. They're going to make you sound a lot worse. And they've done that to other people. And some of the names you recognize in the comment section. And I thought, wow, where is this going? How is this even happening? I had people sending me messages saying that, you know what? I'm glad you're having this conversation. This conversation is needed to be had because, I mean, these are women saying this, right? They're saying, I'm glad you're having this, even from as a woman, from a female perspective. Sometimes we feel our causes are skewed or diluted because of a different approach being taken on them. And I thought, wow, this is really fascinating. So many people have so many different views on the same subject, which gave me an understanding that within feminism, there is an intra-feminism or feminine kind of a debate going on as to what feminism actually means. So I'm going to preface this conversation from my side. I'm not even going to attempt to define what feminism is. There are so many angles to this, and I think there are so many components to this a multivariable equation that to solve it is definitely going to be beyond me, because I'm not even going to attempt it. So there you go. I mean, for me, for this particular conversation to take place, there was a reason. Me as the risk management consultant decided to risk everything and have this conversation, and that was purely based on me being accused of being sexist for the post that I put up a few days ago, where the Asian looking lady with the hijab on was doing some sparring. And the caption, in humor, just read, imagine coming home to a wife like this. I'd be home by midnight every night. You know what?
You'd be home by 7 p.m., bro. Come on.
Yeah. Well, that was another common kind of a comment made. But tell you what, Ali, what was surprising is I was actually expecting someone to say, well, hang on, this isn't funny because men are being physically abused and men are genuinely being beaten up by their female counterparts, and you can't say that's funny. Um, Rather, I didn't get any of that. I've got almost 400, I think, comments nearly on that post. Uh, around 30,000 shares alone. Half of them I don't even understand the languages of, you know. But the one comment that did come through was accusing me of being sexist for even mentioning or insinuating getting beaten up by a wife like that. I thought, wow, how does that translate to being sexist, knowing that this is just like tongue-in-cheek humor?
Yeah. And to be fair, I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? The fact that when men don't want to discuss feminism or the movement or feminists, it's a problem. They're being ignored. They're not being taken seriously. You know, they're not being heard. They're not being spoken about or highlighted. But when men do want to talk about feminism or feminists, it's a problem because
It's not
why
just men. Yeah,
why
Ali,
should men
listen,
get to talk about
no.
it?
Forget that. Listen, that comment, I mean, that post that I put up in my own personal group, Majid Ali in the Circle, right? Yeah, that got some bizarre kind of comments. A couple of people actually mentioned, or they had a problem with us discussing this topic, not just because we were men, not just because we were Muslim men, but because we were bearded Muslim men. Somehow doesn't give us the right to discuss this topic. And I thought to myself, well, hang on a second. First of all, you don't even know what we're going to discuss. Or, well, we've given you pointers, titles, but you don't know which way we're going to go. You've made some really big assumptions here. You know what? You know, the acronym assumption makes out of you. If you know, you know. And secondly, if you really are in support of these discussions to be taking place, then surely you've got to encourage them. Surely you've got to get men to participate in these conversations to have a healthy discussion. And now those people who have been watching us or listening to us on our podcast will know that all our conversations are non-scripted. They're just casual conversations discussing things which we may have picked up on through our day-to-day lives in a very casual manner. This is by no means an academic conversation, and it's by no means a technical conversation. This is just a light-hearted conversation, but picking up on points which people often don't want to talk about. And sometimes they don't want to talk about it because they really, you know, they feel that they're going to be shot down by the people who do have the stronger of the opinions.
Yeah. And this is the thing, isn't it? So look, if men do men talk about feminism or do they not? How do we do this?
I have never, look, the accusation being made is that men should not be talking about feminism. These are some of the accusations that are being made.
Wow, okay.
And these are the accusations that have been made against us for being men of, not just men, like I said, Muslim bearded men. Like,
okay.
Whoa. You know, how does that even come about? Why can Muslim bearded men not have a conversation about feminism? And there were some other conversations about, well, let's talk, have you talking about chauvinism or masculinity? Well, hang on, we did. You know, it's a shame you missed out on it. You know, we have spoken about masculinity and what masculinity actually could or should be, or whether it's being misunderstood. Oh, we have a comment coming in. If women debate what feminism is and what it signifies, then men should have the right to do the same. Shutting down discussions does more harm than allowing opinions and thoughts to be aired. 100%. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Saida.
Shutting down, I don't think, is in anyone's favor. If you're true to a cause, and it could be any cause, it doesn't have to be feminism or, you know, masculinity, chauvinism or racism, sexism, absolutely anything. If you're true to that cause, the very last thing you'd want to do is
shut down the conversation.
Shut down any conversation.
Yeah.
You know, and this is, I think, you know, in the past, a lot of people have perhaps gone wrong, especially in things like racism, bigotry, and all of that. Is you look at someone, let's say, for example, if it comes to talking about bigotry or racism or Islamophobia, if you see an overweight, bald, middle-aged white man, are you just gonna say, "Mate, you don't get a say here. We're not listening to you. You're part of the problem or whatever." You're not. And if you
Mm.
are, then inadvertently you are part of the problem.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. 100%.
Now, you've got here Muslim bearded men
Mm.
talking and opening up about feminism, about feminists, what it means to us and what we understand about it. And that's a perfect
Or just
opportunity.
our general observations.
Yeah, and that's a perfect opportunity to come join us and share with us, how right, how wrong we are, how, whether you can sort of contribute and enlighten us a little bit more. I mean, what do you make of feminism? What's your sort of take on it?
You know what? Personally, I don't have because I understand. Like I said earlier, it's there are several components to this multi-variable equation. I don't think feminists themselves have concluded to one idea of what it actually means. I think there's an intra-feminist debate about what feminism actually means or should mean. So I'm
Mm,
by no means going to attempt to define it. The only thing I will say is, from my understanding, feminism grew or actually became more widespread in the late 19th, early 20th century in an attempt to get the women folk, especially in the Western European regions, to
mm,
have for equality when it comes to work and being allowed to do certain things, so like voting or working, equal pay, and all that kind of stuff. So that's where the roots of it came from. That's my basic understanding. And like I said, this is by no means an academic conversation, but this is where it stems from. Now, what it's turned into, however, on the other hand,
mm,
is something a little different to what I believe it kind of set out to achieve, the whole notion of feminism. Yeah. I
mm,
mean, now you have a very detailed and in-depth analysis of feminism, and what it should or could mean. I've had conversations with people who have, these are females, these are women, who have been who feel that it's actually I'll quote her. What she says is, it's almost an expectation on women to support feminism, but feminism doesn't always support all women. And this is what she said to me yesterday, and I thought to myself, that's is really interesting, because yeah, you can have different ideologies, you can have different thought processes, you can have different ideas, which is all healthy. There's nothing wrong with that. But shutting down somebody else to, or forcing them to believe what you believe, in
mm,
itself isn't the right way to go about doing things. We need to have open dialogues, of course, but we can't force our own views on other people. So this particular lady,
mm,
she was responding to somebody who, a non-Muslim, who had left a very lengthy comment in a post somewhere about Muslim women being subjugated. They're not being free because of them wearing hijab and all those kind of things. So this lady actually corrected her and said, look, you know what? I'm actually a revert into Islam. I opted to follow Islam through choice, and I wear the hijab through choice. In
mm,
fact, I don't think it's oppressive to me. For me, I wear it because it's liberating. I'm liberated from the shackles of society's expectations of how I should look to appease the wider public. I'm liberated from
mm,
that. I'm free from all that. I don't need to please anybody. I only please my Lord, and I'm true to my own belief system. Whether you subscribe to that or not, it's a matter of choice. That's it. There's no
mm,
debate about it for me. Don't tell me. But actually, she was telling her that you've misunderstood it. You've misunderstood your own. Actually, you've been brainwashed. That's what she was told. You're brainwashed to even think like that. So when you start to impose those ideas onto somebody, irrespective of what it is, whether it's to do with any particular topic, It's sad to see. Minda says
Mm,
feminism have made a rod for their own back. Wow, that's interesting. How would you say that is, Mindo? I'm really interested to know more about why you feel that way. So yeah, I mean, different people have different ideas. Different people have different interpretations of what feminism means. Within the
mm.
feminist communities, they'll have different interpretations. But the moment you start to impose your beliefs or your ideas onto someone else, that's when things are not going to go in the right direction for either party. For it
Mm.
doesn't matter what the debate is.
And to be fair, it harms your own cause more than anything, because people
Yeah,
that you've sort of shut out, or you're breathing down their neck, or you're forcing something upon them, for them it's quite easy to just turn around and walk away
of course.
or ignore you. But you've lost that opportunity,
Yeah, to have a
you know?
a constructive discussion,
Yeah.
or a fruitful discussion in which you can put forward sensible ideas or thoughts, and let the
Mm,
people make their decision. Why are you forcing your stuff on everybody else? Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Everybody has their own way of doing things. Look, the thing is, another interesting comment on the post was, there's a misconception or a misunderstanding between fighting for one's rights and feminism. And this came from Sister Roxana for Muslims in Need. She says people kind of get confused between the two. They're not the same. You either fight for your rights or work towards, getting your rights,
Yeah.
or you don't. What's basically,
Yeah.
is
Because
kind of
look,
conflated.
yeah, your rights are going to be your rights, regardless, yeah, of which way the weather goes or the momentum goes or whatever. But the truth is, with feminism or the feminist movement, or with a lot of these, I'm going to call them movements, for sake of argument, is that they change over time,
Mm,
and they evolve into something else. Okay, so initially maybe it was just about women, or even women here in the West, getting a right to vote, getting a right to equal pay, getting the right to go to work, and leave the house, and whatever else was going on at the time. But
mm.
it's evolved so many times over recent years that it's kind of lost, and it means different things to everyone. um you know what,
I'm not,
there's
you know what? I'm not against evolution. I think sometimes it's progress, but when it's a devolution for some people rather than an
which
evolution, that's some people might not be comfortable with the new ideas. So
yeah,
leave them be. You know.
yeah. Look, if you're fighting for, let's say you're fighting for equality, which is basically what this is, isn't it? Or supposedly so. If you're
That's the bottom
fighting,
line. Yeah.
if you're fighting for equality,
Mm.
that's you. That's what you're looking to achieve. That's what you set out to do. Are you a feminist? I don't know. Do you need to be? Do you need that title? Where does that come from?
Well, you know what? There's another. I came, I came across this earlier on. It said if feminism stands for equality, what does modern feminism solve which equality doesn't?
Which equality doesn't?
For me, this is a discussion on equality, whether it's to do with gender, whether it's to do with feminism as in gender, or whether it's to do with color, caste, creed, religion, all these other things. It's always for me going to be a conversation on equality and justice. That's what it's going to boil down to.
Mm,
These new notions, call me old school and call me backwards if you want, I don't give a crap, but these old, new notions of these, new interpretations of what they should mean and what it shouldn't mean, and for me it's just a bit too much, man. It's a bit too
yeah.
much.
And I think this is the problem. I think you even touched upon it a couple of weeks ago, is that, do we really need to put everything in a box? Do we need to title everything? You know, does
Mm.
everything really need to be masculine or feminine? Can't it just be what it is?
You're right. And this was my
Um,
conclusion at the end of the conversation we had about masculinity. For me, these are just labels which are drawn out so much sometimes. You're bleeding to death. The bloody labels are bleeding to death.
mm,
It's exhaustive. You either have certain qualities or you don't. Okay, in certain context, when you're describing something, fine. If you want to use some certain terms, and if you don't, your choice. But
Mm.
overall, I don't see the point in going so deep in these labeling, and to find out exactly what could be the conclusion. What's the conclusive definition of these
Mm.
labels? Because, like I said, there's an intra-feminist debate on what feminism actually stands for or means. But
Mm.
here's the thing. I haven't said that in
20 minutes
6
in, yeah.
episodes. Here's the thing. What does it or should it stand for? Look, if feminism is just a label to say, look, I want to stand up for the rights of women to be given the opportunity to have equal opportunities, equal pay, all that kind of good stuff, I'm with
Mm.
you. You, there's
Okay,
no
so
issues there.
are we here? Are you actually saying live on Beardos Media
I'm a
that Majid
feminist.
Waris is a feminist?
I'm with you, sisters. Yeah, in
Okay.
that regard,
Wow.
yeah, I
Didn't see
have
that
no
coming at all.
issues. I have no issues in saying that. I have no issues. Here's what I do have contention with. It reminds me of George Orwell's book called Animal Farm. It's a political satire in which there's a farm of animals, and the owner gets killed or whatever, and then there's just animals having to rule the farm now. Yeah, and the pig at the main guy, he's trying to be all political and try and get everybody to rule or live their lives in his way. And his famous line is a quote used so many times: all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others.
Wow. Yeah, that's deep.
If it's equality, you fight for equality. It doesn't matter who that woman is then. I haven't seen the diehard, some of these loudmouthed, self-proclaimed feminists sticking up for the women in France who are not allowed to wear the hijab. Where are
To
you
the
now?
contrary. Yeah,
Where are
that's
you
true.
now?
Mm.
That's hypocritical. If you want to be classed as a feminist and want to be fair and just, I haven't seen any of your posts sticking up for them.
Mm.
It's a
Good
freedom of
point.
expression, freedom of what you want to wear, freedom of thought, freedom of religion. Where are your
Mm.
posts?
Do you think feminism maybe should have faded out a long time ago? Because, okay, maybe it was needed at some point, yeah. But we're just completely lost on what it actually is. Now it's just hijacked. Like a lot of movements, they get hijacked, yeah. It's just and then you get other labels like feminazis and everything else. But I think a lot of that is rightly so. Because, and I tell you what my own experiences of, feminists is that it's 90% just about hating on men.
I didn't want to say this, right? And I'm not
Uh,
saying that it is the case. I'm not
It
saying
is
that's
what
the
it is.
case, right? I'm not saying that's the case. But when you say "but" at the end of a sentence, it just says it all, doesn't it? But here's what I was asked again in a private conversation last night, and it was by a female. The question was, have you sensed that some of these diehard, hardcore kind of feminazi, or there's a new term that I came across, Radfems, radical feminists, most of those who are against men is because they've had a bad experience of their own with a
Of
man of
one
some kind.
man, one
Yeah.
relationship gone wrong, one, broken heart, one, marriage that didn't work out for whatever reasons. We can't go into people's, you know, personal stories and situations, but I would say so. I would say majority of the time, these people that come out and be this sort of extreme feminism and everything else is because they've had a fallout. They've had a broken marriage or a broken relationship, and it was fine up until then. No, no one is a feminist before they have a bad marriage or bad relationship. Everything seems to be okay and in order, and you could be happy for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. But the second that it goes wrong, I'm not saying for everyone, but there's a bit of a pattern here. You know.
Look, I'm not going to say either way on that particular point. What I will do is say that I've heard people have that conversation. It's things that they have observed, and this is where people are afraid to say what they think and because they get shut down by some people who speak the loudest, who have got the higher number of followings. And unfortunately, that breaks down the conversation, and they can't get to the
Mm,
actual core, the core of the matter. Unfortunately, it's we were talking about toxic masculinity.
mm.
Somebody mentioned toxic femininity yesterday. um but their conversation was revolved around being a masculine female is toxic for a relationship, and that's a completely different conversation. I suppose it takes you into a different direction.
I'll tell you what that person was probably getting at, and I understand if this is their point, and it may not be, is that, look, in any kind of culture or society or whatever, you've got fairly laid out roles, yeah, for men, for women. You can be equal, but not be the same. And I think that's the difference. That's what people are not understanding. And I think feminists, or a lot of feminists, or a lot of people who have hijacked the feminist movement, are just hating on men, but then wanting to be men at the same time. That confuses the hell out of me. I can't.
Are you referring to what you've observed from amongst the modern feminists? Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, I cannot look. We're not here to give any definitions. We're here to talk about what we know in our
What we know,
own
or what
sort of
we've
circles.
observed and interpreted from our
Yeah.
observations?
Well, what we've observed
It's
is
all
what we
going to be
know, isn't it?
subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is subjective. But look, you can't hate on someone but then want to be them and have everything that they have at the same time. Bit of a contradiction there.
Yeah, of course.
It's confusing, isn't it?
It's like almost saying, look, I want some again, these are conversations that I've personally had with people giving the example of somebody wanting the man to stand up for her if there are blokes around,
Mm.
to help her, to protect her, but feels like, it's the wrong thing for a man to offer to kind of, I don't know, move some furniture around.
Yeah, or open the door, or I don't know,
Yeah,
pay the bill at the restaurant, or whatever it
yeah.
is. Um, do you know what? I honestly, I think this is maybe, and I don't mean to be controversial or anything, but
No, of course you don't. It's just your name, isn't it?
um, maybe it's a label that we could do away with. If we focus more on equality and understand that equality is not about being the same. You know,
Mm.
Men and women are going to be different. It doesn't make
But
them
when you
any less
say it's
equal.
about equality is not about being the same, are you saying something like Peterson would say, it's about equality of opportunity, not necessarily the equality of the outcome?
That's the difference. The equality of opportunities. So yeah, I think you gave an example of bricklayers. 99% are men.
Yeah,
Should we only be allowed 50% male
should we
bricklayers?
have a
Or
quota? And the same thing for nurses, I think he mentioned in
yeah,
the
nurses, bodyguards, prison guards, whatever, whatever. It's I think that's where we go wrong. And then a feminist will pick up that, oh, but men are paid more, and then but there's this, but there's that. But are they though? Like, are they for the same jobs? Is it different? Is it everything else? Like, you want this part of a man's life, but you don't want the other part, and there's
Well, this
just
is
there's
yeah,
just
this is
gray
what I'm
areas,
saying. Look,
isn't it?
I mean, again, I heard about the discussion, and I understand the contention with having the disparity in pay between men and women, and that gap should be closed if they're doing the same job and it's the same role.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's no denying that.
Mm,
Um, on the same note, when we talk about the equality element, then that equality has to be applied across the board. It can't be selective. And this is, I think, one of the contentions of even some of the other feminists, that those who are the loudest are not applying their own standards across the board fairly
mm,
in equal ways. And I think this has become an issue. And the example of the hijab I mentioned earlier is a classic example. I have yet to see anyone on my I mean, I come across a lot of uh, self-proclaimed feminists and stuff. Again, like I said, I'm one of you. I'm with you. If it fits that above description which I mentioned earlier, but when you're there standing up for feminine rights or female rights or rights of women and empowering women, don't claim
Mm.
that you're empowering women when you're only empowering some women
Some women, yeah, or
and
those
not
that are
others.
like you. That's the thing. Look, a lot of these feminists will go out and want to do away with things, you know, from a theological perspective. Like they'll want to do away with the hijab or the headscarf, or they'll, and you're just thinking, okay, let me give you an example of a Muslim feminist who says, but why should I have to wear a hijab? Why doesn't the man wear a hijab? Why should, I protect my modesty, or in a different way to the man? Why should the man be an imam, but then I can't? Why should I raise my son to be a
Mm.
certain way, but my daughter to be a different way?
Or as
Uh,
Aisha says, would a woman president be taken seriously by Muslim men? Yeah, those kinds of
yeah. Now,
examples. Yeah,
it's like I don't- is it an oxymoron to call yourself, that type of Muslim feminist? If you're a Muslim,
don't know about Oxy, but
if you're okay, well, if you're a Muslim, do you really need to attach feminist to that? I mean, surely, if you abide by Islam or you follow Islam or believe in it, that gives women their rights. Am I right?
yeah, you see, this is the debate about from an Islamic perspective, you're either a Muslim or not. You either subscribe to Islam as a whole, as
Mm,
understood by the classical scholars as well, or you don't. You can't pick and choose and say, I'm a Muslim minus X, or I'm a Muslim plus this, or I'm a moderate Muslim, or I'm a
mm,
liberal Muslim. What does that even mean?
yeah.
I'm not in favor of these kind of terms because I think it's diluting. You're either a Muslim or you're not. You can't say I'm a Muslim, but I'm gonna drink alcohol. I'm a Muslim. But I'm not. I think lying is
No, no,
fine.
it's not even that much. Okay, fine, drink your alcohol, but don't say I'm a Muslim, but I think drinking alcohol is fine
That's what I
or
meant. Yeah,
okay. Yeah,
yeah.
and this is where it gets ridiculous. So I think, look, if you attach yourself to any faith or religion,
Mm.
I can't speak for others, but obviously I'm a little bit more familiar with Islam. I think Islam gives you those rights, and it gives men and women different rights.
Well,
So if you're
the
going to
rights that
come,
the rights that women were fighting for in the 19th and even before then 19th century in the Western world, these were rights afforded to Muslim women in the Muslim world a long
yeah,
time before that.
maybe 500 years prior to that.
Well, maybe 5 centuries prior to that.
Wait, what did I say?
500 years. I'm just joking, confusing you.
Yeah, but see, this is the thing. I think you can. What does it stand for? What should it stand for? Where is it needed? It's not needed in the Muslim world. I tell you that much.
No,
If
I
you're a
think
Muslim,
no. Here's the difference. I don't think it's needed in a world which subscribes to and practices Islam in its classical ways. But those parts of the world who claim to associate themselves to being a part of the Muslim world, often you'll find that they're following culture as opposed to religion, in which case there may be a need for feminist movements to kind of help them attain those rights, rather than being given away, like, or overlooked or oppressed. And there are areas in which a classical there are areas in which majority people would be Muslims, but
mm,
if from the outside they'll say, oh, this is Islam, this is a Muslim thing to do, but there'll be a
mm.
cultural thing to do, and then Muslims will be labeled as the people who are being oppressive, whereas it's not Islam, it's the people who claim to subscribe to Islam but happen to be in living in a country which is majority Muslim by label.
So would that not just mean, because look, if you're gonna join one movement at a time, is that not just really slowing down the process? Like, surely if you're in a country which is majority Muslim, but things have gone a bit wishy-washy or pear-shaped, should women be separately fighting for their rights, men separately fighting for their rights, maybe the poor fighting for their rights, and then everyone is just sort of, do you know what I mean? It's just tug of war, isn't it? Everyone's just pulling in different directions. Surely the emphasis needs to be back towards Islam, like your foundations, the rope, cling on to
Yeah,
the
for
rope.
Muslims, without a doubt, we have quite a broad audience. So taking that into consideration, if for Muslims there is a way of life, there's a code of life, and if you subscribe to the religion and you are identifying yourself as a Muslim, there's no point in saying I'm a Muslim, but or I'm a Muslim,
Mm,
but this, I don't like this or that, because then you've got so many other things that you can have a conversation about. And then what are you going to be left with if you're a Muslim minus something or a Muslim plus something? You're not really a Muslim. You're something else. You're just something else. That's
some
it.
kind of hybrid, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because you hear that a lot nowadays.
yeah,
There's,
yeah. Of
there's,
course you do. Of course you do. And I think that's not the right way to go. Personally, that's just my personal opinion.
mm,
And that way we get to see so many divisions and offsprings of what they claim to be still Islam, but frankly, it kind of far from it. Far from it.
mm,
Taking down the family unity is the devil's goal. What better way than to divide women from their menfolk than to make them think they're less than in whatever way and therefore need to fight? Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. It really is. And some of these movements, that's exactly what they do. They really do come along and do the devil's work.
Mm, yeah.
And it's a shame because why would you really want everyone to be the same? Why would you want men, women, and children, and young and old, and everybody to be the same? And we're not talking about equal. We're talking about same because, man, do you know what? I sometimes sit there, Maj, and I'll scratch my head, and I'm like, how come women have so many rights in Islam? Do you know? Like,
Yeah.
let's say me and
Yeah.
my wife both go to work. Yeah,
Yeah.
how come I have to pay the bills and buy the food?
Yeah. And she doesn't have
What's
to.
She didn't have to do anything. Whether she does or not, that's really up to her. But me, if I want to be, I don't know what the opposite of a feminist is, yeah. But if I want to say, well, no, I should be able to, have somebody look after me and protect me and be able to stay home and not have to do anything and not have to, provide or cook or whatever. Isn't that a bit of a pickle?
Yeah, look, everyone has their roles in the Islamic spheres, and within
Mm,
that role, if you subscribe to the Islamic way of life, within that role, men have certain roles and certain benefits come with that, and women have certain roles and certain benefits come with that.
mm,
And then, if you ask the Muslim feminist who wants everything to be equal, then they're going to be very disappointed with being a Muslim. The
yeah.
reality is equality, it's not about equality in Islam, it's about justice,
Mm.
and being fair and just towards each person's roles, and you subscribe to those roles. It's
Do you
as
think
simple
a
as that.
true feminist wants to do away with those rights that perhaps Islam or any other similar faith gives you?
No, i
So if
think
you're
i think they want to keep them rights and have more.
it does seem that way, but do you know what? Okay, look, benefit of the doubt, yeah. Let's say there's someone, really true to this and believes in it with a passion, and they're like, well, no, even though Islam says, look, her money is hers and his money is also hers, is wrong. We want equality,
Yeah.
you know. We don't want to abide by that or follow that. We
Mm.
want, all of these other things. So I think that's an interesting subject. I think maybe we should get in touch with some feminists and say, like, is Islam a little bit too much for you? Is it wrong to raise the status of women so high? Maybe sometimes 3 times above men in the case of your mother and your father.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what's with that? Like,
Yeah, I think and this is one of the contentions again of people who have come across feminists who are, I don't know whether you describe them as feminazis or radfems. These are just terms that I've just recently, well, not feminazi, but radfem is a newly discovered term for me. They would describe them as being selective as to when feminism applies and when it doesn't apply, and when a man needs to be of a certain demeanor and when he doesn't need to be of a certain or shouldn't be of a certain demeanor. Which
Mm,
is why I think there is always going to be a dichotomy of beliefs if you're a hardcore feminist as well as a Muslim, where you feel if your feminism kind of agenda is based on equality alone, then you're gonna this dichotomy is gonna settle in and it's gonna result in some very dreadful, awful kind of
mm,
results. But if your feminism is based on justice, then that's a different conversation altogether. And this is why I was saying that for me, feminism is about justice. And if it's about seeking justice in whichever role or faculty of life you might want to pick, then I'm with them. This is why
mm,
I would say I'm with them. Yeah.
I'm not with them. I'm
you're
really,
with
I'm really,
you're with more than just your fair share, I think.
I'm really not with them. Do you know what? It's not even anything against women, man. I love women. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
I respect, I respect women, and I don't think they've been well guided, or in trying to be men, or trying to be the same as
No, I'm
men.
not saying I'm not saying about trying to be
Um,
men. I'm saying seeking justice. If you
yeah.
are,
So,
yeah, when it comes to seeking justice, if a woman is at work and a man is at work, they've got the same roles. Yes,
mm.
damn right they should be paid the
So,
same.
do you think there's actually a form of feminism out there that is just Islam in disguise? It's just saying, I want my Islamic rights.
I think you know what? There are people who have come and embraced Islam because of the rights afforded to women.
Yes, but they wouldn't refer to themselves as a feminist, would they?
No,
What's the
Muslim,
opposite of a
being a
feminist? What?
Muslim,
Yeah, which is
not.
more than enough, isn't it?
I'm a Muslim. I'm not a feminist. That's it.
Yeah.
that's more than
We
enough.
we do have it on record that you claim to be a feminist, so
I'm a
you know.
feminist. Peace, my sisters.
Yeah, this is it though. This is it. Where is it needed, if anywhere?
I think it's needed where it's needed. It's as simple as that. Where it should be applied effectively. And I gave
Mm,
you the example of the women in places like France. The hijab being banned there, they cannot even wear the hijab. How look? Listen to how ridiculous is this? During the pandemic, the heights of the pandemic, you have to wear your mask. You wear a mask, you're okay. But if you use your niqab to cover your face instead of a mask, you're fined.
you'll find, yeah. Is
Just think about this logically, people. Think about this
is
logically. You
is there a
know,
feminist
how
movement?
stupid is
I'm
that?
sure there is,
Oh,
but there is a feminist movement in France, right?
probably they've got all sorts of movements now. I wouldn't surprise if they have.
And that's a great question. Like, where does feminism or the French feminist movement stand on the hijab? No doubt they're anti-hijab because from the
I'm
outside they
glad.
see it as
Yeah, I'm glad you
perhaps
think your own question is a great question.
yeah, you know what?
That's a
Good
great
like that,
question, Ali. You're talking to
good
yourself.
like that.
So, Sahara says feminists are confused. Let's just ignore the rest of the message. No, she says feminists are confused, definitely selective. So much so that I have been told by a feminist that I am oppressed because of how I choose to dress, i.e., the hijab, and that I don't even realize that I'm oppressed because I was raised like this. Oh wow! And I reverted at 24. And this is the point I was making earlier on. This is the
Mm.
point that I was making earlier
Now
on.
read that back again. Yeah, a feminist will tell a hijabi that they're oppressed because of how they choose to dress.
Yeah.
How could you be oppressed by expressing your choice and your opinion? This
Exactly.
is it's the exact opposite of what oppression is.
That's
But
an
because it does,
oxymoron, isn't it?
yeah, there you go. I knew there'd be one in there, but it just doesn't fit, man. Feminists are confused. I'd have left it there.
Oh wow, Fatima joins us all the way from across the pond. It's like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. right there, right now. So modern day feminism, which promotes equality in inverted commas, doesn't make sense to me. Men and women are totally different. There's a reason why men are born and built to lead. Oh, that's
Love it.
that's an Ali appeasing comment, that is.
Yeah. Did I write that? I don't remember writing it. But yeah, absolutely. The men and women are different. We're supposed to be different. Let's stay different. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't see the problem in that.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you, Philippa, for the comments. Abu Alamgir says, in feminist theory, religion is patriarchal. Patriarchal. You know, this was this not the beginning of the feminist movements? Was this not the main reasons given about being politically and patriarchal, led by men, and that's why the women deserve to have their place as well? Was this not the case? I think initially this is how it all started. I think this is how the initial movement began between the late 19th, early 20th century.
I couldn't tell you. I could only sort of tell you where we are now, and it's a very weird and confusing place. Look, we spoke earlier about, you know, maybe women who have gone through a bad relationship or a divorce or whatever. Yeah. Now, the predominantly, from my own observations and experiences, most feminists are, you know, divorcees or single or ended up single somehow. But now, what effect does that have on young women who are
Wow, is
brought
that
up
your
on?
personal? Is that your personal experience? Like the most,
Yeah,
most.
I
Okay.
think so. I think so. Now,
You think
my
so, or it
question.
is an experience? You're not sure.
No, from my experience, I would say most women who end up a little bit radical or extreme or whatever in what they believe to be feminism are just hating on men because you know, they've come across a bad one. But the thing now is that they don't stop there. They'll never say that was a bad egg. They'll never say it didn't work out, or, you know, this guy needed this or the other. But they'll go so extreme and they'll be so, you know, look, feminism was never meant to be anti-men. So don't make it that. You know, if you've got young women coming up, and they're yet to experience the world, and they've been raised, you know, with their own sort of traditional values and everything, you don't need to be telling them that men are trash. Men are not trash.
And you know what? Inadvertently, that's what it's happened to. You know, that's what it's become. I was reading something the other day, and a woman was making the comment, "I'm so proud of my daughter. She is a feminist." Unfortunately, what's happened now is she started to hate men. It's got to that stage. How do I deal with this? Well, she was proud of her for being a feminist, but hates men. Now, this is where there's the balance is not, you know, it's not there, is it?
And I think we discussed this on the topic of masculinity.
Masculinity, yeah.
And, you know, we had a lovely brother come on, a very interesting guest, and he said, look, you've got masculinity and femininity. Now, both qualities and traits should be equally accessible to everyone. Yeah. Which was something that I didn't understand, because I personally am of the belief that, look, men should be majority masculine and women should be majority feminine. Okay, there's going to be times where, I don't know, a woman needs to take a spider out or something. Yeah. Or a man needs to cook or whatever. And that's perfect. That's absolute. That's a beautiful balance. But to give young children, men and women, boys and girls, the absolute blank canvas to say, look, daughter, if you want to be majority masculine because that's how you feel, that's fine. If you want to hate on men and, you know, whatever, and really approach the world as if you're a man or you can do anything better that a man can do, and that's your aim and objective, I think that's warped. I think that's strange. I think it's unhealthy. I think it's just unhealthy.
Okay.
That's just me, though, right?
Thank you for your contribution, Mr. Controversial Khan.
Oh, look,
I don't,
I don't know why this is, and I don't mean to be offensive, right? But women should know
oh,
their
I do.
place.
What did
Women
you just
should
say?
know their place.
Wow.
No,
Wow. Did you
okay,
just say that?
yeah, and it's the same for men. Men should know their place,
Okay.
and I don't know why it's so offensive.
No, it's
You
offensive
know,
only if I think if it's only if you say only for women that they should know their place. Now because you've balanced it out
no,
now, the men should know their place. That's
no.
okay.
But look,
You've balanced it out now quite
look,
cleverly as well.
it's quite rare that a man will get offended when you say to him that you should know your place or your standing in society or the family or whatever your role is. But with women or feminists, we find it's quite offensive most of the time.
You know, on
Like,
on that note, I think Fatma has a good question. I have a question for the gentleman. She says, in your opinion, does feminism tend to fall under the category the overuse of women's masculine energy?
actually, that's a fair summary of probably what I was just describing a few minutes ago. Yeah, I would say so. Not that I'm a gentleman, but yeah, I'm going to answer it anyway. I'm hoping you were referring to me, right?
Well, as a gentleman,
As a gentleman,
she
yeah,
doesn't
I've
know
been
you well
called.
enough, obviously. Yeah, fair point, Philippa. You don't have to be single divorced to be feminist. Mate, I said it on a live podcast today. In a particular context, mind. I'm a
Mm,
feminist. Yeah. So Tahara says, I think us women jump on the feminist bandwagon because of the idea of government, etc. But we've lost or don't even know what feminism actually means. So it's all quite ugly. Exactly what I was saying earlier on. I think there's an feminism or feminist debate in which people haven't really concluded what
mm,
feminism actually stands for or means conclusively.
mm,
And for that reason, we're always going to have this debate and this uncertainty, and different feminists will feminism in different ways.
mm.
Yeah, yeah.
It is
Uh,
ugly. I think it's very ugly. Okay, so Zishan says women need to become masculine when catching the spider, and men more feminine when they take the rubbish out. Yeah, absolutely.
Zishan, are you single?
Not for long with comments like that, but yeah, look, absolutely. You know what? No one's saying it has to be 100, but then at the
Mm.
same time, should you really be saying, is it healthy? Okay, look, let me ask you a question. Would it be healthy to raise young girls as 90, 95, 8, 98%, in touch with their masculine side?
Would it be healthy or unhealthy? Is that what you're asking?
Would it be healthy? Look, okay, modern day, I don't know, the powers that be or the government or whatever, yeah, will say to a 5-year-old, uh, if let's say he's a boy, yeah, will say to a 5-year-old, but that if you feel like a princess and you want to be a girl and all of the stuff, yeah,
Hmm.
go right ahead. And your parents can't say jack to you because then that's child abuse. Yeah. But generally
Hmm.
speaking, look, I think that's taking things too far. And I think that's where feminists are eventually going to end up, is they're just going to teach women how to be men and then just outcast men. Like, okay, what does the feminist movement teach men? Like, where does it bring them in and educate them and guide them and say, look, we're
Or
with
what are the
you.
sacrifices or investments made by feminist movement to educate the men about feminism and or healthy feminism?
Mm,
It doesn't work in their favor to sacrifice or invest in men,
yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah. It's
Many men have misused their power against women for a very long time, so it's no surprise that women decided to work towards promote being independent in inverted commas, so that if when hits the fan, they're not left completely screwed, says Leila Yogi. Interesting.
I don't know.
Um, huh?
I don't know. I guess there's an element of truth in that. It's a bit accurate, but then, do you know what? If something is wrong, do you just counter it with another wrong or something else, or do you try and rectify that? If look, and this is my personal opinion on this. This is my sort of understanding. Yeah, is that I think Layla's right. I think men went wrong first, uh,
You know what
because
that makes you?
they stopped being.
You
Go
know what
on,
that makes you? That
don't
admission.
say it. Don't say the F word.
It is. It makes you a feminist, bro.
Uh, but look, I think
Welcome
men.
to the club. I think we need a badge for Ali for joining the feminist club. Thank you, Ali.
No.
Welcome to the club. With you, bro.
But yeah, look, I think when men went wrong and they stopped being men, proper men, and they just went into this kind of macho business, or overly strict or powerful or oppressive, what needed to happen then was just sort of like, rectify that, bring them back online. Yeah, okay, you're the
Mm,
leader, yeah, you're the man of the house, yeah, everything, but that comes with a hell of a lot of responsibility, you know
yeah, yeah,
now.
yeah.
If you can't fulfill all your obligations and your responsibilities and everything else, then you know what, just take away that power from them. You're not here just to be a bully. Men are not supposed to be bullies.
Mm,
And
mm.
I think a lot of men became bullies. So now what's happened? How have women countered it? By becoming bullies back.
Interesting.
Where's the fix? Like, where's the solution?
Good question. Good question. That balance hasn't been attained because of the
Mm,
struggle. I was going to say jihad. Yeah, the jihad for justice, the struggle
yeah,
for
absolutely.
justice.
Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah, the jihad for justice. Don't get your knickers in a twist. Oh, did I just say it? I didn't mean it that way. Honestly, I'm with you. I'm with you. I didn't mean it that way. But what I was saying
Wait,
is
so
yes.
look, do you like men can wear knickers, right? Is it equal? What's what's the problem?
You know, in the Indo-Pak region, they call them knicker. So of course, if you go going by that definition, of course, men can wear knicker. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Oh, this is an interesting one.
Yeah, so look, the bottom line, I mean, we've got some really interesting comments coming in. Feminism means equality, but women must understand that our natural strengths are just as men must understand theirs. We can't be totally equal. We are made to complement one another. Feminism is more about men accepting that, and that's where the struggle is. Interesting. Well, interesting. One aspect the thickness of feminism causes a disconnection in relationships, and here's why. I've seen it so many times. As ladies growing up, we are taught to be, this is not me speaking, by the way, this is me reading out a comment by a
Sounds
female.
like you.
Yeah, well, only on Sundays. We taught to be independent, and that's great, but what tends to happen is that when we get into a relationship, that independent mindset carries on, which causes clashes with men, unfortunately.
Mm,
Another interesting point. And you know what? It's interesting to hear this side from women rather than just men. Um, balance is key, absolutely. Uh, Philippa, welcome to the conversation. It's probably worth listening back to this from the beginning at some point when you've got a chance. Um, but in conclusion, when because we almost come to an hour already, the bottom line is, for me personally, when you ask about the problem, the solution, or where do we go with this, and I'm going to say the same thing as I said when it came to the discussion on masculinity, and that is these labels, masculinity, femininity. Why do we need them anyway? For me, when it comes to things like masculine energy and all that kind of stuff, people have different interpretations. There are certain qualities about certain people who which they either have or they don't, or they nurture or they don't want to have. This is a matter of choice when it comes to certain things in life. I think the over analysis of terms such as feminism and masculinity actually causes more issues than it does good, in my
mm,
personal opinion. So when it comes to femininity or feminine, uh, the whole debate about being feminine and what it actually means, I think it's being over analyzed at times. And
mm,
people have certain things they prefer in their lives and certain things they don't. Simple as that. If you don't like certain things, just say you don't. If you prefer certain things, just say you do. But don't try and mask it under the guise of femininity and brush or try to enforce your opinions and brush everybody with the same brush and try and force everybody else to subscribe to your way of thinking, because that in itself is against equality, the very
Mm,
thing that people think that they're standing up for. So if you're going to be an advocate of equality, be an advocate of equality objectively, not
mm,
only for things which suit you or us personally.
mm. Absolutely, yeah.
That's my final 2 megabytes worth on this topic.
Yeah, I think you're right. How do I conclude? I think feminism, I don't think it's needed. I think it's lost its way. I think it's too far gone
Well, as
now
a movement, are you
to
referring
come
to?
back. Yeah, as a
Mm.
movement, yeah.
So I was going to
So
say, we
look,
need feminines around.
feminists, let's say
Okay.
feminists, or what I understand from feminists. Look,
Okay.
if you're fighting for equality, I'd interpret that as women's rights, yeah, because we're not always going to be exactly the same. If you want men and women to be exactly the same, I don't even know where you turn to. I honestly don't. But
Yeah.
if you're fighting for women's rights, then the feminist movement, and I hate to burst your bubble, sisters, but the feminist movement is not going to give you that. It's going to have you hating on a lot of people. And it's not just men, it's going to have you hating on women who choose to be what you would perhaps describe as oppressed. And that's not what you want, right? If you want women to have women's rights, then women have the right to the hijab, or women have the right to be a homemaker, or women have the right to do all of these things. Genuinely speaking, if you're looking for women's rights, you're not going to find any better door to knock on than Islam. Honestly, hand on heart, I believe that. Look, whether you're Muslim or not
And
Muslim,
that's not you just saying that as a man, but
no,
it's
no, no,
what
no.
women are saying. And that's why we have, the highest conversion rate to any religion is to Islam, and more women than men convert to Islam.
Yeah,
It just
and
tells you
that's
something, doesn't it?
absolutely, and it's predominantly because of these women set out to reestablish their rights, and they found them under Islam.
100%. Boom. And on
Hmm.
that note, do we have a soundbite for things like this? You know what? Let me just. I don't know if this is gonna work. There you go. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the conclusion of our topic today. See, it wasn't as bad as you might have thought it was, or it was
We're
gonna
good
be.
people, really. Do you know what? Us Muslim bearded men are misunderstood. We're
Yes.
so
So those
misunderstood.
of you who are picking on us for being for discussing this topic, because we're not just because we're men, not because we're Muslim men, but because we're bearded Muslim men. That's three objections in one people have had for us to be discussing this topic. Well, sorry to disappoint you. And on that note, guys, ladies and gentlemen, and mainly ladies today, thank you for tuning in. We are super appreciative of your comments and your contributions, as always.
Mm,
If you enjoy the rest of the weekend that's coming up, and the rest of this week that's coming up, and we'll see you on the next one. Toodaloo.
inshallah.
Tra, inshallah.